Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All right, thanks for the heads up on Whistler. Appreciate that. All of our guests today on this Friday, including John Shannon, standing by. Brought to you by Big Al Chris Manson and the folks at Whistler Golf Club. June, arguably, and time's running out, the best month to golf.
Oh, is it ever?
Given the longer daylight hours.
Oh, yeah.
Whistler Golf Club, as we bring in with Game 6 tonight at Edmonton of the Stanley Cup Final, Oilers and Panthers. NHL Analyst, co-host of the Bob McCown podcast, John Shannon. John, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Happy Friday, boys.
Yep.
You know, later in the show...
By the way, before we get started...
Yes.
I think Ryan has a lot of gall to be ripping Rick's shirt when Super Mario is sitting over there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I mean, seriously.
It's a good point.
Seriously. Yeah. Does he have a new shirt for the photo shoot?
No.
Is this it, Ryan?
This is it?
No, I do have a more professional-looking shirt.
Something more dressy.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. So, I mean, seriously.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
But don't forget that John is coming to us from Toronto, so, I mean.
That's true, but John is a proud BC.
That is without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Hey,
Yes.
I wanted to ask you this, John, if you don't mind. Later in the show, we hope to bring up the 1988 Stanley Cup Final, Oilers and Bruins. There's a relationship between that series and what's going on with McDavid in this Stanley Cup Final. Did you cover the blackout game? Did you produce the blackout game? Game 4, 1988 Stanley Cup Final, second period. The lights go out in Boston Garden, and they had to play Game 4 all over again, but the stats still stuck for Game 4. Did you work that?
Yeah, I did that series. I also did the 1990 series that the Oilers won their last Stanley Cup, where in Game 1 the lights went out again. I don't know if you remember. And the game went to triple overtime, and Peter Klimas scored. He had played 3 shifts up until that point.
Yeah, off the bench.
Klimas scored in triple overtime off the bench. John Muckler's team. Yeah, no, I was. We were there for all of that. Absolutely, that was. And somebody said to you, do you miss not being at the Stanley Cup Final? Not a bit.
Yeah.
33 of them is enough, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Broadcast booths and control rooms can be chaotic at the best of times. I can't imagine what was going on in that situation. The moment tonight, Oilers down 3-2, trying to become the first team since the 42 Leafs to successfully erase a 3-0 deficit in a Stanley Cup Final. Do you see the moment, or this moment, getting to the Oilers or getting to the Panthers?
I think it got to the Panthers the other night. I actually think the pressure tonight is still on the Oilers, because the Oilers are win or go home. They still have to prolong the series. Florida, if it plays its game, and I think the first 10 minutes are going to be the key, Florida is still a little bit in the driver's seat because they know they can go home and play on Monday night. So I think the pressure is still on the Edmonton Oilers to do what they do, and certainly it's going to be crazy at Rogers Place. But, you know, it's funny. If Florida scores first, I think there has to be concern. If Edmonton scores first, I still think that, you know, that Florida has enough resilience that they can come back. So to me, it's first goal. I know that sounds rather mundane, but the first goal, and I watched the first 10 minutes. If Florida comes out guns a-blazing, then this thing could be over tonight.
Hey, John, Jim Rutherford did an interview yesterday with Ian McIntyre and basically said about his free agents that we've been talking to them a long time. It's time for them to make a decision. Basically saying that's it in terms of any offers better. You're not surprised that Mr. Rutherford's drawing a line in the sand here?
How many times, even in the short period of time that Jimmy's been in Vancouver, have we seen this type of communication?
Yep.
You know, we saw it when the news came out of Bruce Boudreau's window to leave came up. Well, where did that come from? That came from the club. Jimmy is a tremendously smart, tactical manager, president. He knows exactly what to say and when to say it. It got a ton of attention in Vancouver. I'm sure every agent read it, and I'm sure the players got the message too. And on so many levels. You know, you guys talked about the messaging about the Horvat scenario.
Yep.
You're right. I think it's exactly what's happening. Don't get used to certain guys being in Canuck sweaters because they may not fit financially. Period. That's the end of the story. And the loyalty should be to the logo on the front, not the name on the back. And I think that in many ways was the key message that Rutherford had. You
have covered enough July 1st to know there's going to be a ton of guys getting overpaid. And we're talking not about guys 26, 27, 28. Like the numbers we're hearing for Chris Tanev, 4 years, over $5 million. Like, John, this market on July 1st, there's going to be a lot of contracts that are going to be, you're going to look and go, really? But that doesn't surprise you.
All it takes is two teams.
Yep.
And so every time you bring up a name, like Chris, you're going to say Dallas for sure, and you're going to say Toronto. Who are in dire need of defensive support. And there's nobody more familiar with Chris's work than Brad Treliving. So the leverage that certain players will have exists only when they can find a way to stir up any interest from at least two clubs. Now, I think Chris Tanev is going to have more than two clubs interested in him. And the other part of this thing is I'm not as concerned about the money, Rick. Term is going to be an amazing storyline on lots of this stuff. And I mean, I don't have to tell Vancouver fans about, contracts in the past 5 or 6 years that looked good at the beginning. And then when you realize the term was 4 or 5 years, they ended up being a buyout. So teams are thinking that way again, I think. Let's get 2 good years out of a guy. And gosh, if he's 38 years old and he's in his 3rd year, maybe we'll think about buying him out.
Yep. We mentioned earlier about how you're in Toronto, but again, proud British Columbian, but you have spent a lot of time in Toronto. The wheels are in motion in Vancouver for a trade involving Ilya Mikheyev. The Canucks have given Dan Milstein, Mikheyev's agent, permission to talk to other teams about a deal. What are your memories of Mikheyev as a Leaf?
Well, he was in the Kyle world, and the thing that Mikheyev had and used here, I think, more effectively than he did in Vancouver was his speed. But as he was in Vancouver, he was injury prone. So if you have speed but you're not in the lineup, it doesn't really help you very much. There was a few guys that got nurtured by the Maple Leafs that have bounced around the NHL after the Leafs, and Mikheyev's one of them. That you wonder, did they fit what Kyle Dubas wanted to do, and do they fit anywhere else? I thought the Mikheyev signing originally for Vancouver was a really good one because I liked what he did. I mean, remember, this was a time in Toronto where they were debating guys like Mikheyev and Zach Hyman. Should they try to sign all of them? And they couldn't because they had bottled themselves up with their top 4 and with Morgan Riley, their top 5 guys. So from that perspective, I think, Mikheyev has tremendous talent, but it took a couple of teams and it just, the leverage was on Mikheyev's side and he was able to parlay it into a really lucrative contract with Vancouver.
Best part about this interview, John, is that the lights stayed on in both your home and our studio, and that's a good thing.
Hey, there are some people that have accused that my light hasn't been on for a long time, boys. So.
Well, you listen to the first segment. My light's having some problems too.
Hey, I was glued. I was glued to the first segment. It was fantastic television. And if the photographer wants to get here to Mississauga, I'm ready for my close-ups too, Mr. DeMille.
Yeah, no problem. We'll get him. We'll get him there next weekend, John. Thanks, my buddy.
There you go.
Thanks, my friend.
Have a great weekend, guys.
All right.